These days on social media, we come across short videos showing interesting strokes of luck, like the ones we've shared. But some of them have longer and unbelievable stories. In fact, they've managed to escape certain death in a weird and crazy way, and their stories will seriously blow your mind. That's why today we want to share a few of them with you, so stick with us till the end of the video. Oh, by the way, before we dive in, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on our awesome videos that'll get your adrenaline pumping. All right, let's go. Number 1. Have you ever been startled awake by something? Like the annoying buzz of a mosquito near your ear, your neighbor blasting loud music, your room getting way too hot on summer nights, or having a nightmare. I know these can all be disturbing and nerve-wracking, but they're normal occurrences. Ruth Hamilton, on one October night in 2022 in Canada, had an unbelievably strange experience of waking up, and I have to say, she survived it in a peculiar way. Hamilton woke up with a sound resembling an explosion, quickly jumped out of bed and realized her hair was all messed up. She looked disoriented and frightened as she gazed around. Suddenly, her eyes locked onto the ceiling of her room, which had a hole in it. And from that hole, a red stone had fallen exactly next to where her head had been resting. That's right. It was a meteorite, a red stone about the size of a fist, less than an inch from where her head had been resting, had punched a hole through her roof and landed in her room. Now, she says, she wants to keep this meteorite as a memento of the night that brought her the biggest stroke of luck in her life, and she'll tell this story to her grandchildren for years to come. Number 2. Have you ever gotten super mad about something during the day and thought it ruined your whole day or maybe was the worst day of your life? I know it's been tough for you at times, but if you hear about Betty Lou Oliver's worst day, it might just make your tough day seem like a joke. The story takes us back to July 1945. The final months of World War II. On one of those days, 20-year-old Betty was working as an elevator operator on the 80th floor of the Empire State Building. Suddenly, she heard a sound like an explosion. The story goes that on that very day, Captain William Smith, a young and cocky pilot, was flying his B-25 bomber back to New York City on a mission. Unfortunately, the weather was extremely foggy, but Smith ignored advice to land, and suddenly, boom! The fog caused Smith's plane to collide with the Empire State Building. Just before Betty could react, she was thrown into the air and slammed into a wall. Her leg, back, and neck were immediately broken, and tragically, this accident also claimed the life of Captain William Smith. But the story didn't end there. Quickly, the building's staff rushed to Betty, placed her on a stretcher, and put her in an elevator to take her down to lower floors. However, this move made things worse than before. The cables, weakened from the plane crash, suddenly snapped, and Betty experienced a 1,000-foot free fall. Under normal circumstances, Betty would have surely died this time. However, the broken elevator cables descended faster than the elevator itself, and when the elevator's body reached the ground, they acted like shock absorbers, cushioning her fall. Betty was severely injured, no doubt, but unbelievably, she recovered and returned to full health in just 8 months. Number 3, sometimes life can show its bitter side, and we go through a lot of pain and suffering. But I hope during those times you never give in and never even think about suicide. Instead, think about a better tomorrow and keep going. Unfortunately, Fernando Balbuena Flores couldn't handle the situation and took a suicidal step. In a shocking incident at a busy New York subway station in September 2019, a 45-year-old man was walking hand in hand with his young daughter. In the midst of the crowded platform, just as a train was approaching, he jumped onto the subway tracks. What's even more heart-wrenching is that he dragged his 5-year-old daughter with him onto the tracks. Sadly, people didn't have enough time to react before the train arrived, and Fernando was instantly killed. However, miraculously, his daughter survived. People quickly came to her aid, helping her get out from under the subway car and to safety. Anthony Loa stole her bag during the rescue, but Jairo Torres was commended by the Bronx Borough president for his heroism and bravery. The girl suffered minor injuries and scratches, but returned home with her mother and other family members later that day. Fernando, on the other hand, was battling depression and taking medication. Number 4. You know, many of us still have a fear of heights, and we're not exactly thrilled about getting on airplanes. But I've got to tell you, there are people out there who are daring to a fault, not a bit scared, to the point that if luck doesn't have their back, who knows what kind of trouble they might get into. Like, take a look at this movie from the 1920s, for instance. There's this guy changing the tires on a moving airplane. It's insanely scary, right? Gladys Roy was another one of those fearless individuals who passed away in 1927. She was an extraordinary stunt performer, but what made her famous was playing tennis on the wings of a moving biplane. Yes, you heard that right. She and one of her colleagues, Ivan Unger, waited on the wings of a biplane until it climbed more than half a mile into the sky. Then they started playing tennis. Their feet were strapped to the plane so they couldn't move, and on top of that, they had released the plane onto an early autopilot mode, which made the conditions even more terrifying and could have caused the plane to crash due to severe turbulence. But incredibly, they both emerged unscathed, repeating this stunt multiple times. Number 5. Many times people might be involved in each other's deaths. I mean murder, but not with guns, with various methods. But if you're really lucky, you shouldn't worry because you can get lucky here too, even if you find yourself in the crosshairs of these attacks multiple times. One of these lucky individuals was Victoria Cilliers, who, on Easter Sunday in 2015 in Wiltshire, England, was engaged in skydiving. She was a professional skydiver and had experienced many jumps throughout her life, but this one was a bit different. Her husband, Emile Cilliers, had secretly sabotaged Victoria's parachute the night before and had tampered with critical parts of it. When Victoria was plummeting towards the ground at a speed of 60 miles per hour, she realized that her parachute was malfunctioning. You know, such a fall is deadly. But the field where Victoria landed had recently been plowed, and she touched down on a soft piece of land. She was severely injured, but miraculously survived. The police later discovered that Emily, who was a sergeant in the British Army, had simultaneous relationships. He had promised his second wife that he would leave his first wife and live with her forever. A few weeks before Victoria's parachute jump, Emile had opened a gas valve in his house late at night and then left to spend the night at his second wife's house. In the morning, when Victoria woke up before her children, she smelled the gas in time and prevented this major disaster. However, she wasn't certain it was her husband's doing and jokingly messaged him asking if he intended to kill them. In the end, luck was on Victoria's side, and they both survived 2 murder attempts. In 2018, Emile was tried and sentenced to life in prison for the murder conspiracy. Victoria, after recovering from her injuries, had suffered emotional trauma, but managed to make significant progress in her well-being over time. In 2020, she published a book titled I Survived, recounting her harrowing experiences. Thanks for watching! Don't forget to like and subscribe, drop a comment and let us know which part you found more interesting. Be sure to share the video with your friends too. Thanks!